All right, we're on the air. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well today. I am so glad to have Tim and Mark and potentially Doug TenNapel if he ever decides to come by. And we got a bunch of fun things to talk about, especially the launch of Black Ops Volume 3, which is in the chat, and you could all buy it now. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you guys launched this book and got funded instantly, I think. As soon as I clicked on it, I think you guys were already funded or at least partially there. And you guys are getting really close to 15 grand, so that is awesome. And it's been like half a day probably. But I am so glad to see this book doing well because I really love the story and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, as far as the speed, honestly, that was the most surprising thing to me because the previous record was, I think it was Common America, and we funded, I think we got $2,000 in about an hour. And in this one, we hit our funding goal in 15 minutes. And I think the reason why it makes us happy is because Black Ops is a hard sell as a book. I mean, on Indiegogo, we have the Needle Mover Society, Doug Garrett and Matthew Veely to thank because it took us about 3.5 weeks to make 8K. And so that was like pulling teeth. And so I just thought, well, it is a hard sell because you're looking at military animals doing really wacky things. And I think what's happened is it's kind of the advice that we give to a lot of people behind the scenes. They want like the fast money, like, hey, how do I make a success like Common America? And it's like, well, you don't, because what you do is you put the legwork in, and after a grind of X number of years and consistently putting stuff out on time, you would just hope that people start noticing and people just trust that you're going to deliver. And I think that ultimately that's what's happened, is that word of mouth has kind of accumulated, and it was like, wow, that Common America book was good. What else do you have? And they just keep on hearing these guys they deliver. So if nothing else, that you're going to get something. And in this case, my gosh, 2 years, 216 pages worth of work, and it's done. We're almost halfway done with Common America 2, and this book is shipping almost immediately. I'm putting the order in for the printing in about 14 days so that we're going to have it by the time it ends. Yeah.
That's the thing that drives me crazy, I guess, about Black Ops is that technically we've only put 2 issues out and we're about to put a 3rd. I mean, we started in 2018, but it feels like we've been working on these books for 10 years. We've got everything plotted out. We do so much plotting, and we've got character Bibles and universe and setting Bibles and all that stuff written out. We know we're taking all the characters, but then there's this part where it's all in my head, so it feels like it's already been done, but it's not. Like, we still have to write and draw. We're only on issue 3.
Yeah, and Tim, to address one of the things you said, when people want the shortcut, there usually is no shortcut, and if there were, it's probably not even worth it. Honestly, I don't think a shortcut would ever be worth it. But you guys have put in so much work, and like you said, I think, what was the number, like 261 pages you said in a year?
200 in 2 years, 216 pages, but this year alone. Holy cow. I did the math not too long ago, but I think since January, we've produced more than 200 pages of work between only 2 of us.
Yeah, so your hand is going to fall off pretty soon.
It already is. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you knew this or not, Nasser, but supposedly I need to have another checkup, but supposedly I have an ulcer. Because,
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know. And they say, and I think if it is stress related, it's because I don't feel stressed. I think life is good, but the body obviously knows more than I do. And, so I was on medication for about 2 weeks. It went away, thank goodness. And then it flared back up again over the weekend when I was off it. So I started back on, and my wife is, I think, going to meet with the doctor tomorrow because it's someone that she works with, and see what we can do about it. So, I mean,
Tim, that means you have to drink more milk, because milk's the only thing you can drink with an ulcer.
No pain, no gain, I mean, you work hard, it has its consequences, but the only thing I'm wondering is, as long as I can keep on going, that's all that matters.
Right. Yeah, and we have a question here from Tyler from Draw and Talk. He says, "Whoa."
John
Uh,
talk.
he said, "Whoa, that Tim, that's awesome." So,
Yeah, it's awesome you
he,
got an ulcer, Tim. Fuck yeah.
I know, right?
right. So he's glad you have an ulcer.
Yay!
He says, so many pages this year. How do you find the time?
My gosh, I don't know. So Mark knows about it because he's been with me since the beginning. But when I worked in merchandising, it was kind of a weird setup because they were like, you just invoice us at the end of the week for how many hours you worked. And I just thought, hey, I don't want to set off any red flags, but how do you know? I could work on one thing and just bill you guys for 36 hours. How would you know? And they're like, one, we would fire you for doing that. Two, we know. I mean, we employ so many artists in merchandising that we have an estimate of how long it takes them to do work. And what I had to do was I had to train myself how to draw fast. And Mark had seen me do it at conventions, but typically someone will come by and say, hey, I want to commission you to do this. And I'll tell them, like, okay, I can already tell you right now, it'll take about 45 minutes to an hour. And they're like, okay. And typically I do it within that time frame. So I don't know, I just got to the point where I'm able to pace myself and kind of know my limits. I know pretty much if you look at any piece of unfinished work, I can tell you how much longer it would take, assuming I work from beginning to end. It also helps that right now, like, it's just my wife and I, we don't have any kids. So that really, really adds to being productive.
Yeah, and the thing I always tell people is that the only way to get the work done is to actually do it,
Yeah.
because nobody writes or draws slow. They're just not sitting at their desk if they're not getting it done, and if they are getting it done, they're actually putting in the work. So I mean, it is a matter of finding the time, but if you actually do sit down and do the work, I mean, you'll see the results.
I feel
Yeah.
bad for writers though, because you have these grand ideas percolating in your head, but they can't manifest. Like this, the rollout is so slow on them
Oh,
just
tell
because of
me about it.
production.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm writing a book right now, and there's like three other books I want to do at the same time, but I just can't. I gotta finish this one, and then it's like, like my third latest idea. I want to jump to that one, but what about the two that I got in between the one I'm writing and that newest one? And it's like a constant thing of jumping back and forth, deciding which one I want to work on.
Yeah, like my book comes out this Friday on the 24th is when the pre-orders on that are going to fulfill. And
Awesome.
like writing prose is one of those things where like you spend an hour, writing a paragraph and you're like, that's done. And you're like, oh, wow, that you read the paragraph, it takes you an hour to write. It takes you a minute to read. You're like, oh, this is going to take a while.
And then you hate it. You just despise everything that you put down.
I'm proud of the book that I wrote that's coming out on Friday, but it took me so long to write it. By the time I was done, I was freaking sick of that book. I didn't want to look at it again.
Man, that's another tough part for me is actually rewriting it because you're your own worst critic. So so then when you reread it, you're like, I hate you.
Yeah.
I think another hard part for some creative teams is so like Doug Ernst, he uses the analogy. Have you seen that movie Pacific Rim?
No.
Okay, well, I don't even know if I should encourage you to watch it or not. Your mileage might vary in terms of if it's good or not. But anyway,
I've heard
in the
mixed
movie,
things.
in the movie, there's these giant mechs, and the way you pilot them is that you pilot in tandem. You have to have two people, but they have to be working in sync with each other, because if they can't work together, they can't pilot this huge thing. And I think that what Mark and I have going on is kind of unique because we think alike in terms of where we want to take things, that we're very good at copy editing each other. So it's this constant back and forth from beginning to end. And we run into some creative teams where like the end product is just not good. Like we'll read it and be like, oh my gosh. And it's kind of like, hey, you had a team of like 2 or 3 or 4 people who edited this? Oh, we all edited it. And I'm like, well, how in the world do you have so many typos and like a plot hole here and this other plot hole and this dialogue that doesn't like make any sense? And I think so that becomes kind of problematic when you have people who they might all agree on something, but that's not necessarily good either, because it means they can't catch each other's faults. But I think where it came into handy with Mark and I is that we basically worked as copy editors and critics. So we treat it more of a technical skill than we do like an artistic exercise.
Well, it's also that we don't take it personally because we've known each other for so long. So like when I write a joke in the script and Tim's like, "Mark, that wasn't funny," I'm like, "Okay." But like on Black Ops 3, I think I must have read that PDF Tim sent me like 12 times, and I would still find like a little thing for him, like, "Tim, Patriotter's red hip star is the wrong color on this panel," and Tim didn't just go, "Fuck you, Mark," and lose it at me when I did that. So we don't take it personally when we find problems with each other's stuff.
Man, one time I read a comic last year actually. I bought this indie comic from somebody, and under the credits they had two different letterers, and one of them was also the editor, and yet there were still so many typos. Like they had like I don't know, they had like periods in like the middle of sentences. The quotation marks were all wrong. Like there's punctuation inside of them and outside of them.
I will tell you this. So in Black Ops Hair Trigger, there was one spelling error, and it was the word loyalty. I had put an extra I in there, so it read loyalty, and it was actually Matthew Veely who caught it. Now, here's the funny thing, is Mark and I talked about it, and I said, this really makes me mad, because how in the world do we read this thing, I don't know, like 50 bazillion times over and not catch this one thing? Should we hire a copy editor? And Mark has had so many bad experiences with, this goes into another topic about editors. Mark has had such a bad experience with people who edit him, who don't just look for that, but they're basically looking to rewrite him from whole cloth, that he was like, no, let's just take our chances, and if we miss that one spelling error, we'll chalk it up to our own idiocy. Like, we're not so thin-skinned that, someone's like, hey, dumbass, you misspelled this word. We'll just be like, yeah, we did, too bad. Sorry.
One thing to do is because when you read it over and so since you wrote it and you know what it says, so your mind kind of glosses over spelling errors and wrong words and stuff, is just change the font, and so it'll sort of register in your brain differently.
Yeah, I've done that, and also reading it out loud sometimes helps. So those two things, but yeah, nothing's quite as good as a fresh pair of eyes to find typos. Yeah. But yeah, Tim's right. I mean, I've had so many negative experiences with editors that decide that they're also writers and that they're a better writer than you, and just completely f up your script. I'm scarred for life on that. But I mean, I've also done editing work myself on Magademia, Walmart 3. We brought in two guest writers, and Tim wanted me to edit their script, and so I guess I'll do a Bunderdome on editing, just my personal views on it. But I think that if you're gonna edit someone, you have to be a guiding hand, I guess, with the plot, but don't micromanage the script. So, like with the backup story in Magalorian, I basically gave a brief plot synopsis of how this needed to fit in and where it needed to go. But our guest writers, their jokes are their jokes. I didn't rewrite their jokes for them. I didn't tell them what jokes to write. It's all their stuff, And if your criticism is well, that's not how I would have written it, like, well, then you should have written it yourself instead of hiring other people to do it. So I think that an editor needs to be able to step outside of their personal preference on how they would have written something, and let the writer who's actually writing it do it themselves. It's their script.
Yeah, like one time I had an editor went through like 2 drafts of a comic I wrote, and he pointed out, he's like, yeah, this part kind of sucks. I was like, yeah, you're right, and then I fixed it, kept it, still my vision, but when someone tells you a part sucks, and you look at it and you're like, right, this is how I could fix it. And so he's like, yeah, that's much better. And then just randomly one day he's like, oh, I want to talk to you about your script. I was like, okay. And then we got on the Hangouts, and he's like, all right, so I think if you cut like 23 pages and added this new subplot, you could start with this other opening. And like, he completely tried to rewrite it. I was like, please no, like, I'm not listening to this. And oh, Doug's here. It's the official Legion of Doom.
Oh my gosh, it's him.
Doug TenNapel in the house.
Wait. You're supposed to be on vacation. What are you doing?
Look at this is me on vacation.
Your vacation is hanging with Nasser.
Right. Doug wanted to come by and talk books with us. Doug, what did you say? I couldn't hear you.
I said I like that. I like talking books. Can you still not hear me?
Yeah, now I could hear you.
Okay, so Doug, we were just talking about editors. Do you have any good stories about editors? What's your personal opinion in terms of editors?
Editors are, well, you're a writer, so you might be a little closer to being able to write better. I'm borderline illiterate, so my writing needs a little more education behind it, of grammar and knowledge of sentence structure and stuff like that. So I really value all my editors I've had. I've had light editors and heavy editors. So a light editor example would be Image Comics. I always had Eric Stephenson was my editor on 10 books. He edits everything, right? He'll go through just looking for a few spelling errors here and there. Not a big deal. Scholastic, heavy edit. Very rarely content, by the way. Still, like, Bill will hire 3 professional editors to go through your book 5 times. They'll do a grammar pass, punctuation pass. And this is on 100 and 200-page graphic novels. So there's a lot more pages to edit, right? I often get back like hundreds of pages of fixes to make. Swap letters, bad grammar, whatever. So I need them because I can't tell you how many times I've printed a book and they're sitting there in print for 10 years and there's a spelling error, on page 50, and I look like an idiot, and it drives me crazy.
Well, have you ever dealt with an editor who wants to rewrite your work themselves or replot or restructure your work themselves?
Those do not sound like good editors or professional editors or a human being I would ever have a conversation with.
Well, that's good, because I've worked with some editors like that, and the response I've always gotten is like, well, Mark, this is just the way it's done. But then every person I've talked to, like you and Chuck Dixon, said the same thing. We're like, no, that's not how it's done. That person was just a jackass.
And
I never thought, I always thought it was the writer's job to provide the content for his book.
Hey, me too.
And an editor goes in and fixes it. But he's not a plot editor, right? He's not a character editor. As a friend, I want everyone to give me notes. So as a friend, my editor may be a peer that would say, oh, this is my opinion on it. But usually I work with editors that aren't as good of a storyteller as I am. They're better at grammar than I am. That's their job.
And Justin Mobley in the chat says, shout out to Mark for his videos on the Bunderdome about his writing process. They're helpful, and it's great to see what you wrote alongside the finished page. And I put the link to the Bunderdome here so everybody could go see what he's talking about there with the writing process videos. But those were actually very informative, and I still need to watch the latest one. But I really liked the Peanuts one. That one actually really helped me for something I was writing now, Mark, with that has a cast of characters.
Oh, thanks. The Peanuts one's actually my favorite one of the ones I've done so far as well. Second favorite's the Ghostbusters one, but that was the least popular. So, man, all you people. But thanks, Justin. Thank you for the feedback. I'm glad that even though I'm still getting started as a writer, I'm able to help people and assist them. So, cool. Thanks for watching.
Justin Mobley also gets a shout out because he is our star backer. I think he's typically the first to back all of our projects. And so the way our arrangement is every time we see him at a convention, he can basically have anything that he wants on the table.
Yeah, and I want to take a look at Black Hops real quick, but I do want to, we'll read this one first. From Revolver Solver, says, question for all of you, has COVID made any change in how productive you are? And congrats to Doug for beating cancer again. I mean, I'm still the same with productivity. It hasn't decreased it or increased it. But what about the rest of you guys?
No, the only thing it's done with me is it's not healthy to just sit down all the time. You got to stand up and do something. But what I would normally do is go to like a Walmart or Buc-ee's because they're typically big and they're air conditioned and I can just walk around for an hour. And walking around for an hour with a mask on sucks. So I'm actually more homebound than normal. Other than that, productivity has not really changed at all.
I mean, for me, it's pretty much the same as well. I have a day job, I have my 40-hour-a-week day job I got to go to, but I have been getting some extra hours each day to write because I don't have to commute since I'm working from home. So that extra hour a day that I spend commuting, I'm actually spending at home and focusing more on writing. I do have to go back to the office soon, though, so that's going to go away. But it's not really hurting my productivity at all.
Slight increase in production for me because the shutdown brought the kids home. So before there was like 5 places to 7 places to drive them to school each day. Now there's 0. So I don't have to contribute to the family carpool by driving kids back and forth to appointments. So that bought back some time. And then also just the culture of everything in shutdown forced everyone in the world to live my life, which is sitting in a studio. So it was slightly more comfortable to be there, slightly more everyone else is shut down just like me. So there was like nothing to do but go to my studio and work. So it's helped things a little bit. That's the good side.
Gotcha. And I'm going to share my screen here so we could take a look at the campaign. Doug, have you backed this yet? Have you backed Black Ops
I think
Omnibus in Volume 3?
Just went out today. I only remember the rack. That's why.
Rack.
This is Tim's children's book, Rack. I have not, but I need to, definitely. It looks great.
We want those kids to grow up with healthy libidos.
That's true. There are 2 things you can do to a kid to help. You can expose him to, this is to keep him from turning gay. You can expose him to common America, and you can help him chew tobacco because you've never seen a gay person chewing tobacco.
Hey,
natural.
Are you making this joke because you talked to?
Need to know you should back this. I'm talking to the dads out there.
Are you saying this because you talked to Robert? Because he and I were joking about this very same thing yesterday.
Oh, was he? Was he? No.
Yes.
I don't think I've shared this rant with him about.
Okay. Next time you talk to him, bring up the conversation that he and I had. It was quite hysterical.
I think the best thing you can do is, so I grew up watching like Tex Avery cartoons, like Red Hot Riding Hood or Who Framed Roger Rabbit with Jessica Rabbit. Show your kids something like that, Don't show your kids Steven Universe. Show them some old cartoons.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So, and there was already so much exposure of Steven Universe. We're already creating a generation of Project Runway contestants.
Pretty much. You're those Honey Boo Boo kind of kids contests that are only enjoyed by people who should be in prison.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Oh man. So story-wise, what can we expect in this issue?
It seems like every time we do a Black Ops book, it's kind of a soft reboot. We try to have our books designed so that anyone can pick them up as a first book. I think it was Chuck Dixon who gave that advice. He said that every comic book is someone's first comic book. Mm-hmm. And so it's this idea that in Black Ops, we've had 3 volumes, and every single one has almost been a fresh start. Volume 1 was an origin story. Volume 2 basically kind of ignored Volume 1 in terms of, hey, you don't have to read the first volume to know what's going on here. And this third one, because we decided to integrate it into Common America, it basically is a good starting on point for people who have read that book but are not familiar with Black Ops. It's very straightforward. I mean, we have the origin summarized in 1 page. It's a strike force comprised of modern day cryptids. There's a rabbit, a hyper intelligent rabbit. There's an otter that's also just as intelligent, but he's a lot more violent by nature. And they have to go after a target. They have to rescue someone who is trapped in a castle somewhere and is being held captive by the bad guys. And I honestly can't give away more without giving away some huge spoilers to it.
Gotcha.
It is basically, and I don't like the X meets Y comparison, but I don't mind talking about genre inspirations. It is definitely in that same vein of, let's say, G.I. Joe, military action. I know that our focus is on a female character, but there are two male characters besides the animals that are new to the story, and we don't want to spoil their arc. So for people like Mecha McCheese who are really big into like the male characters, we have that. But I'm just being very honest in terms of our marketing. Like, people like the female characters in comics, so we're just highlighting her. And she's been around longer. She's been around since Volume 1. So we're actually building on her character arc as we move into Volume 3 and introducing new characters as well. We have a dog, so we're bringing in Commando G, or Command Dog, as we call him. And,
well, our approach to plotting is that each volume is an episode, so each volume tells a complete narrative, but each volume moves the storyline along. So you can pick up any volume of Black Ops you want, and you'll get a complete story. But each volume builds momentum upon each other towards our ongoing plot threads. And Tim mentioned G.I. Joe, and the Larry Hama Marvel G.I. Joe comic was plotted very similarly, where every issue told a complete story. But you could tell that it was embedded in a long-running narrative. But if you picked up just any random issue of G.I. Joe, you'd get a complete adventure in it. So that's the kind of storytelling we're going for.
Yeah, those are my favorite books to read. Is when each one just has its own individual story. Even in like X-Men versus Fantastic Four, that's one of my favorite 4-issue miniseries, and it tells one overall story with each issue just being its own story that you could pick up issue 3 and not really need 1 and 2. Although it'd be better, you don't actually need.
When does this book deliver, Tim?
It is ready to print. So right now we have it slated for October, but Robert, I asked when I talked to him yesterday, I asked him for the lead time. From the time I actually send them an invoice plus the digital files, how long will it take them to print and send out? And the estimate he gave me was 14 to 18 days. So I told him, well, I'm going to measure it out from the last day of the campaign to where we are in the middle, and use Backer Tracker to calculate how much we need to order in a predicted estimate, and order all of that so we can cover both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So on Indiegogo, those people will technically not have to wait after the campaign is over. Literally everything is going to be ready to just be packaged and shipped. So I say October, but by my best estimate as of today, it should be mailing out in the last or second to last week of September.
Awesome. I'm glad that you guys get those books done before launching. Who would have thought?
Well, it's a paired. I was having this talk with Doug Ernst yesterday, but I said to him that especially last year, spring of last year was very, very frustrating. I think Mark could detect it too, because I was like, look, we're kind of pariahs. I think the community that we were in, they don't like us anymore. How in the world do we move forward? Well, the only way you move forward is you have to basically prove your worth through the work, and that will speak for itself. And so I was talking to Doug Ernst yesterday, and I said, I think there's a new paradigm that's going to emerge within the next 2 years as far as crowdfunded books are concerned. People will see trust and reliability in the people who do the work ahead of time. So basically, we put the investment in, and then the customer reaps those dividends on the back end because they're guaranteed something. They're not going to be wondering where something is.
You're looking for comic fans. This is
right.
And we haven't done the hard work yet. And other movements are not doing that work at all. It's because crowdfunding is born on the internet. It's attracting more YouTube fans than comic collectors and readers. That's just its inherent language is Twitter fans,
definitely.
YouTube fans.
And I heard this argument too that was, in my opinion, it's rather nonsensical. An argument I've heard is, well, if someone is late on their crowdfunding, it's no different than a comic book store being late in terms of the delivery on a Batman book. And I said, no, that's a false equivalency, because in the case of my comic book store, I don't pay them money. So if I'm waiting on Battle Chasers Volume 2 from Joe Mad, I am fine waiting because I haven't given any money to the store. They basically just call me up and say, hey, that book you ordered 2 years ago has arrived. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to stop by and pick it up. But in the case of money switching hands beforehand, you're on the tail end waiting for delivery on that. So I don't agree with that particular argument that's typically thrown back at us. I think that's trying to dodge something very glaring in terms
Every
of
argument made to give a comic creator a pass, I'm not interested in. And that's what a whole lot of arguments are on these mob-based cult of personality, have nothing to do with comics thing. Basically, if they're late on a comic, they go, oh, late is the new cool. I'm like, no,
Right.
it's not. You're still an idiot. You shouldn't be late. There's
And
no
the
excuse
only
for
reason
it.
to be late is because they're not doing the work. So why would you want to buy a book from someone that's not doing the work?
Yeah, I get it if your warehouse is set on fire. But they just learned, oh, we'll just make the audience not care if it's late. I'm going to make my audience care if things are late. I want them to care if things are. I want them to care if the quality is bad and the story is bad and the art is bad. And if I act bad, I want them to care.
Well, there used to be consequences in the comic book industry for being late. Like, I mean, I have some of these 1970s collections of Ghost Rider, you know, the Johnny Blaze era.
Yeah.
And like an entire issue will just have the cover and there'll be a blurb on it saying like, this was a reprint. And they'll reprint Stan Lee's apology to the reader, where he's like, we were late this month on our book, so we're reprinting issue number 31 for like issue number 52 or something. We're very sorry. You know, it was something that they were humiliated by having to reprint for a month because the creator was late. You know, I'm pretty sure if those creators were late more than once, they never drew another comic again. But it's not that way anymore.
Yeah. And I am putting the link again in the chat for anybody that wants to back this book, because you're going to get it on time, and you already know it's going to be a great story and have incredible art on it. So everybody go get it.
But this also shows that we still have to do our job in that we have not even started yet collecting readers. It's the tiniest, we have the tiniest audience. It's a couple thousand of hundreds of thousands of readers. Probably millions. We haven't done, we barely even show up anywhere, you know, as far as on the internet or something. And I'm saying there are millions of people out there, most of them probably manga fans who love reading stories. They're not, manga fans don't collect little 24-page comics with a chromium cover. Manga fans read books. Those kids read giant, you know, phone books of comics.
Yeah, my nieces do that.
We don't have that in our audience, not yet. We have to develop it because we're still growing this. I'm still finding readers. And when I find them, they're going to love what we make.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned manga. I had two creators reach out to me not too long ago. They were looking at our Common America campaign, and they said, our books feature a female as well, and our numbers were nowhere near like as big as you did. So I don't understand necessarily from a marketing perspective like what is different about it. And I told them that I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that my style is catered towards anime and manga influence, so that some of that population just naturally gravitated towards what we had to show, at least from a visual medium. And so you're absolutely correct. In fact, I was talking to Mark this morning. We were looking at the initial numbers of the Black Ops campaign, and the omnibus is outpacing the volume 3 by a landslide. I mean, that's not even close. The omnibus has already sold out of 2 tiers, and what that tells us is the Kickstarter crowd, the marketplace, is the one that's reacting to it, because they're looking at this and they're saying, I have never heard of this before, but now I can get all 3 at once. So that shows that even for the market that we think we have, that there is so much untapped potential, even in the platform that we're using.
I'm so glad about that.
Yeah, they got to get caught up. And that's the other thing is like no one wants, why buy, if they like enough to buy 1 issue, they'd rather buy 3 in an omnibus. They'd rather put it all together. get the omnibus is the way
And
to do it. If you're into
Benjamin-
story, this goes back to my different culture. The culture of graphic novels and traditional storytelling is different than the culture that came out of stores buying 24 pagers every month or two. That is not actually really good for storytelling. What's really good for storytelling is longer books, graphic novels, more responsible delivery dates. That's, I hope, the audience that we find, and I got to believe that's the way most people do things in the world, the way normal businesses work,
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and the way normal audiences work.
I got your Earthworm Jim Volume 1, and that thing's a beast. It's huge. You know, that's a legit graphic novel. It's not a so graphic novels and trade paperbacks are different, and a lot of people don't know the distinction. Like a trade paperback collects 4 or 5 floppies, those 24-page ones you're talking about, those chapters. Whereas a graphic novel is built from the ground up as a complete story that's told over however many pages, enough to get it square bound. And so to produce those obviously takes longer. So you're not going to put out one graphic novel a month like you would a floppy and then collect it into a trade. Right. You're going to put out one graphic novel, if you're lucky, quarterly, if you have that kind of output, or maybe 3 times a year. But like you said, that's the way the marketplace wants it. I mean, even those manga tankobons, which are the phone book size manga collections, those are technically trade paperbacks because manga is serialized and it comes out every 2 weeks. But you know, we on our end in the United States, we don't get Shonen Jump, we don't get Koro Koro, we get the tankobon. So they read to us like a graphic novel that we get, you know, quarterly all year long, and that's just the way people want to read their books now. So
Americans are too impatient to do serialized stuff. They'll watch some episodes on Netflix, but you know, you'd rather have a 1-hour show than a 30-minute show.
Yeah, binge watching is.
You're not going to go to theater to watch a 10-minute short.
yeah, we don't do that anymore. You don't go to the movie theater
once. The whole season. That's what a graphic novel. Yeah, so I'm just saying, if you're in a business and I can only open up, say, 2 campaigns a year, even 4 at the most, I want to pound as much material through that campaign as possible. I'm not going to do it. I give away my 24-page books on every campaign. I give one to every backer for the next book.
And I don't read those because I know I'm going to be too eager waiting for the next 160-page whatever it is.
But I'm saying I give away that other campaigns sell for $25. Mine are free. Right. Because I absolutely don't value them at all. As a storyteller, I'm saying I get it. That's a comic. That is, I'm selling story, and so I can give you
25 is an understatement. Actually, I've paid like 35 for floppies.
Yeah, I mean that's a bubble that's gonna burst. Is the overcharging for floppies on crowdfunding comics? I think you might get a customer once for that, unless they're part of your inner circle fan base. Most orbiting customers are gonna pay $36 for a 24-page comic once, and then maybe they're like, okay, cool, I got this. And then they're never going to do that again because most people don't have pockets that deep.
No, Mark. Right. They're going to do it forever. They love
Some of them will.
Oh, man.
I'm only saying they're probably, or maybe they will like my stuff also, but that's not at the core of what I'm, It's almost like a guy that's into trading cards. A huge epic comic. He's just like, where's the Magic the Gathering card at? I'm like, oh, you're in a different business. So,
oh, man.
If you're into 24 pages, you're in a different business.
This is a really interesting question here from Benjamin Random. He says, will we ever see characters like Common America or Wall might cameo in Earthworm Jim or Bigfoot Bill?
Probably not. That is a trademark issue. That's a copyright issue. Now, don't get me wrong. If they asked, then I would say yes. But the logistics of that are more complicated than just saying yes.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, the rights for Earthworm Jim, it would be really hard. Throwing them in the background of Bigfoot Bill, I just asked Tim permission. Hey, you mind if I got a bunch of cryptids being moved on a truck. You mind if I throw your characters in there? He'd go for that, right?
Heck yeah. And I
would put him in, and then it's like it's a cool connection for our audience to see, like, ooh, you know what I mean? I'm stimulated because I know that, and he's sending a message to his friend that character's in the book. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting too. We touched on this briefly, but there's this line of parallel thinking that's going on, because just as you were wrapping up Bigfoot Bill 2, we were wrapping up Black Ops 3, and the two storylines are eerily similar in terms of they deal with cryptids, they deal with a mysterious location in Nevada that supposedly does not exist. Even I think a principal character that's introduced.
My story like this will come out soon.
Right. Well, I think parallel thinking, it's very interesting to me, because it makes me wonder where the impetus actually originated from, where it's like, okay, well, what made, let's say, 5 creators all at once decide to do books about cryptids? I honestly don't know, because I mean,
Shinobi Sasquatch is another one. I looked at that. I go, oh, there's another Bigfoot thing.
Right. So I mean, it's in that realm of conceivability, and if Doug put one of our characters in the background, I'd love it. I don't know if you've seen it, Doug, but we actually put you in the background of our book.
Good.
You can't miss him. He's the tallest one.
And if you guys ever want to
I'm the world's most famous cryptid.
Yeah.
If you guys ever want to put my characters in the background somewhere, you guys could all go right ahead.
It's called the Peterson cameo.
I like it.
Well, Nasser, you have a cameo in Common America too. Tim already spoiled it, so I'm not ruining it for anybody.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm so happy I finally got a cameo. I've always been waiting, because I remember, I think Tim maybe said, he's like, yeah, we have a list of people we interact with on the internet, and we go down the list and add cameos of them when we can. And I always got excited when he said that. I'm like, I'm sure I'm on this list somewhere.
Tim makes it sound like a nightclub. Like, oh, you wanted the Black Ops? Are you on the list?
Yeah, Nasser. And then you take that photo of the Exorcist steps, and I'm like, good Lord, Nasser, did you get jacked? Like, I gotta redraw you.
Right. And Fresher Luke, I just made him a moderator, because I know he has an Indiegogo. If he wants to post a link in the chat, he can, if you're still here. But he says, thank you, Mark and Tim, for giving me some good editing notes on the copy for my Indiegogo campaign. You guys are awesome. Congrats on Black Ops.
Thank you, Luke. And yeah, his campaign is Forbidden Gods, and art is amazing.
Yeah, Forsaken Gods. I've actually got the link right here, because I did a stream with him on the Bunderdome a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to go ahead and post that link in the chat. But Forsaken Gods looks fantastic, and Luke, he's a storyboard artist on animation, so he's got a lot of history.
And I've followed Mr. Luke on Twitter for well over a year, probably almost 2 years, because his artwork is so good. So follow him on Twitter too. He'll give you a good diet of good pencil artwork.
Yeah, so there's the link that Mark just posted right there. So that's Fresher Luke's comic. If anybody wants to get that, after they get Black Ops, of course, then check that out.
Hey, I'm just stopping in. I'm going to jump.
Oh, right, you're already in bed, so nighty night.
I came up here because they were doing dishes downstairs. So.
Are you staying at a condo, or is it like a house that you have in San Diego?
It's a condo, and it's the same. We've been going to the same condo for 30 years. Is what we do.
Cool.
So we have lots of memories here.
Well, have fun.
All right, I'll see you guys later. And if anybody's hanging out, I'm just eating everything in sight. I'm carving out, and I ran 2 miles this morning, so I'm real proud of myself. And penciled 2 pages this morning, Tim.
Did you, Doug? Do you like chocolate?
Yeah.
Have you been to Ghirardelli?
I mean, in San Francisco.
No, there's one in the Gaslight District there in San Diego.
Oh, okay, yeah. I have not been downtown yet. I'm up in Del Mar in Snootyland.
Well, when you make it down there, if you have time, that Ghirardelli is it's fantastic.
Surf and Mexican food is what I'm about.
Heck yeah.
All right, guys. Anyways, I'm going to jump. I'll talk to you guys. Nasser, thanks for the invite. I'll talk to you guys later.
You're welcome, man.
See you, Doug.
Yep.
Bye.
See you, Mark. God bless you, Tim. See you.
Thank you. You too.
That was cool.
We have been blessed.
Yeah. You've been blessed. You said God bless you, Tim, specifically. The rest of us,
even Mark.
Right, we don't need blessings, but we've got about 17 people in here, so guys, please hit that thumbs up and share out the link. Let's see if we can get some more people in here. Of course, get some more eyes on Black Ops, which I'm gonna copy the link again and put it here in the chat. So that's where you guys could go and back it. And I see you guys got those standees again. Everybody go back those, especially that tier, because those sold out pretty quick last time. And I think there might have been a point where somebody refunded one and it sold like under a minute later. Those ones were pretty popular last time.
What's making me nervous now is that, again, like sometimes these things you just learn by the seat of your pants. And one thing that I don't know why it's never occurred to me, I did not know that the omnibus would sell faster by a landslide than Volume 3. So I allocated everything equally. The standee for the omnibus is more than 3/4 gone, but the one for the Volume 3, there's like a lot of them still remaining.
Oh, okay.
And on Kickstarter, they don't let you reallocate your quantities. So I can't just take 50 from one and reattribute it to the other. They're all here in the apartment, all 400 standees. And so what I'm thinking is like, oh my gosh, this means I have to put another order in like in the next week, just to make sure we have some for not only this campaign but for Indiegogo as well. These things you just can't predict. Like maybe Mark could. It's like, hey, dummy, of course the omnibus was going to sell out first.
So I think what a lot of people in crowdfunding, if you're planning on doing a crowdfunding, just know that there are people who buy on Kickstarter and only on Kickstarter, and people who buy on Indiegogo and only on Indiegogo. And then there's some crossover, but when you do a campaign on one and then the other, you're kind of starting over fresh with that audience. And this is only our second Kickstarter campaign. So that's a fresh audience who's never heard of Black Ops before. This is their very first introduction. So yeah, of course they want the omnibus collection that has all the issues they've never heard of in it. But that's something, we didn't think about. But for everybody else out there who's looking for tips, I guess, on crowdfunding, if you plan to do both Kickstarter and Indiegogo, just understand that you're going to be seeing a lot of different people between the two platforms. So to accommodate them accordingly.
Yeah, and it looks like Justin Mobley here says, I'm waiting on the Indiegogo campaign to get my 2 Volume 3 copies and 1 extra omnibus.
Jeez. Man, the problem, Justin, is that you keep on doing this. We will literally have nothing to give you at the shows. That happened.
The shirts
one
off
time.
our backs. That's all we got.
Yeah, I think that happened during one show. I was like, Justin, I have nothing left to give you. I mean, you can have anything you want on the table for free because I don't know what else there is to give. I might have to do a drawing for you sometime. If we go back to conventions again, looking at how things are going at the moment. Don't get me wrong, we want to do them 100%. We actually did one. When was that, Mark? Like 2 months ago?
When did we do one? What?
A convention.
Oh, geez, yeah. I've only done 2 of those this year, so I keep forgetting that we did them. But yeah, that was about a month ago, and yeah.
Oh man, how was it?
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first one in Little Rock since, the quarantine. So I think a lot of people who have been, just like had cabin fever were really ready to get out and do something. So it had a bigger turnout than we thought it would.
Yeah, that's almost what I thought it would be, but I just wasn't too sure, like if there would be a turnout. But everybody's getting tired of being home, so maybe they were all excited to finally leave.
Hey, real quick. So before we started streaming, I wanted to ask you some questions about DC, Nasser.
Oh, okay.
And I don't mean DC Comics. So what did you visit while you're in Washington, D.C.?
Oh man, well we went and saw some of the monuments, and we wanted to go to like some of the museums, but the museums were all closed.
No.
Really?
Yeah, they were.
Because of COVID.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the unfortunate part, but we did see some of the monuments and the Washington Memorial, all that stuff, and I was just really excited to see the river where Exorcist 3 sort of begins, and then Legion, the novel, also begins there too, and then to go see the Exorcist steps. That was like what I was most excited for. So we're looking at like all these like monuments, and like I'm at like the Lincoln Memorial, and I'm just like, yeah, this is cool, but like I'm really excited because we're only like a 10-minute drive away from the stairs, and I was just getting super excited. And so like my family got so annoyed because I kept saying like, after this let's go to the steps, after this let's go to the steps, and they're like, okay. And they were like, well, we want to see a couple things here. I'm like, I just want to go to the steps, and like I don't have my car with me, we have my parents' car, so I'm just like, oh my goodness, I can't even drive myself there, like I gotta wait for everybody. But we walked around a lot, and there was really like almost nobody else out for the most part until we got to like the Lincoln Memorial. Then there were actually a few people there, but like everywhere else there was like nobody.
Oh wow, yeah. DC is, between my wife and I, it's one of our favorite cities to visit because every time we go there, there's just so much to do, and typically it's free because your taxpayer dollars have covered it. So when I saw that you were in DC, I was actually super excited for you because I'm like, man, if you had 2 solid days, you could cram so much into there. But I keep on forgetting that the whole shutdown thing, and with the riots and stuff like
Yeah.
that going on, like there's a lot of uncertainties regarding how available a lot of those resources are.
Yeah, so we were just there for a day because we were in Maryland visiting my sister. She just moved there probably a little less than a year ago, or right about a year ago, and so this was my first visit there. And she goes to DC quite often actually, and she's probably seen most of the stuff that you're telling me would be really cool to go see. So she and her husband have gone all around DC, and that was my first trip there. And so I mean, we did see a few things, but it would have been a lot better if everything were open, because then we could have gone through the museums and stuff. And a lot of them sounded cool, like this art museum, that art museum. I was like, oh man, I'm really hyped to go to a museum, like just to go anywhere and just do anything. But it was nice walking around.
So Tim told me that he hates the Natural History Museum because everything on display is a replica and it's fake. So you're actually just looking at like plaster and paint. So like even the dinosaur skeletons aren't the actual fossilized skeletons; they're reproductions.
Oh man, we have real skeletons here at home.
Yeah.
In my basement.
In your basement? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Hey, I'll tell you something cool, Nasser. So you've been to the Shed Aquarium, right?
Yes.
Did I ever tell you the story of how I was in Chicago during the filming of Transformers 3?
Oh no.
I was on Wacker Avenue when they were filming it, and they didn't make a sign. There was no paperwork that we had to sign to be on a live set, and the reason why is because in post production they just airbrushed all of us out anyway.
Oh man. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where George is trying to airbrush himself out of his boss's picture.
I remember that one where it ends with the guy like hand draws George into the picture and it looks terrible. Remember that part?
Yeah, that was gold. Well, I mean, it doesn't entirely end like that. It basically like he gets like a new picture of his boss and gets he gets it on the picture, but it was a recent picture of him and his boss. He has something on his skin that might be cancerous, and he's like, "Well, no, this picture was taken 20 years ago and I looked the same. It's probably nothing."
Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, the best museum that I've been to in DC is the American History Museum, because that has real stuff. It has a part that's like the pop culture section museum, and they have the Michelangelo costume from the first Ninja Turtles movie, the 1991, cool. And it's the one that's that creepy meme where it's like that decaying Ninja Turtle face that says like "Cowabunga!" It is. This is like his eyes are bugging out, and he's got this weird grin. Yeah, that's where that came from. But then also it's really weird because you get toward the end of the museum tour, and they decided to combine the slavery section and the Holocaust section into one part of the museum. So it's just the bring down part where you get to that wing in the museum, and it's just like everything's terrible. People are terrible.
Oh man, and I forgot if I read this one yet, but Tony S says made sure to plug Black Ops on my podcast today. Also, Forsaken Gods, even though I forgot the name of it. I've heard like at least 6 different people say Forsaken Gods like 6 different ways. Like they'll say like Forgotten, or
I said Forbidden Gods.
Yeah, you said Forbidden. I was trying not to laugh. I'm sorry, but it's funny because he always gets on. Like I've seen him on a few streams, and the person will say like, oh yeah, and you're Indiegogo. What is it like something gods, and he'll be like, no, it's Forsaken, and they'll say,
I went to Indiegogo and I backed Fornication Gods. Right. I can't wait.
Oh man, yeah. Tony says that comic with the flaming skull guy.
Yes, that's the one.
Forsaken Ghost Rider.
Let's see. Flyfox Pro says, I got the omnibus. I'm excited for it.
The crazy thing is that there's all these people in the chat who we watch their channels. It's just that we don't comment that much. Like Tony S, I think he's working on that no, not Tony. Yes, I'm sorry. Like Fly Fox Pro, I see him all the time on like these other channels of people that we know, like Doug Garrett and Lorenzo Sleestack and all these other people. It's really cool to see a lot of hobbyist creators because I can tell that that's where the passion lies for a lot of these projects.
Yeah, and Fly Fox Pro, he does a good stream. So everybody go check out Fly Fox Pro because he does some streams and they're usually pretty good.
Did you listen to that interview between Jason Robinson and the Comic Book Hut?
No. I never did.
That was a good one. That guy, he can talk. Both of them can. Comic Book Hut's actually a really good interviewer.
I'm surprised he had him on since he didn't want to talk about my book, but he talks to the artist.
Well, part of it is I think Comic Book Hut is an artist, so he can.
No, the funniest
common
part.
Ground.
The funniest thing was like in one video, Comic Book Hut, he's like reading. It might have been like a Kiwi Farms post. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but there were like a list of names, and he's going down. I'm reading this list that somebody posted. When he gets to my name, he's like, "And Nasser, he keeps asking me to promote his comic, but I don't like horror." And then I was like, wow. I was like, okay. He doesn't like horror. That explains it. But then it was either that day or the next day, he puts out a tweet. He's like, "I'll be having Mark Pellegrini on my channel soon to talk this, and horror." And I was like, "What? Did he not just say he doesn't like horror? Like he wants to?" I
think he said that just to get me on the stream because I don't recall talking to him about horror. We talked
that's
about
what I was about to say. I was like, in his defense, they like never talked about horror. They talked about The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
you know what they should. You know what he should do. Nasser, you should be on his show to talk about Seinfeld because that's one thing the two of you have in common. And to be honest, I freaking hate that show. So I would not listen to it, but man. you would get the Comic Book Hut show.
Oh man.
Have you ever been to New York City, Nasser?
No, never. I want to.
Okay, so did you say you want to or don't want to?
Oh, I want to.
Yeah, I mean, New York City is it's to visit. I visited it twice on day trips, but I would never want to live there, and I don't even think I'd want to stay there for more than a day. But going there at least once is really cool.
Yeah, I want to see where they filmed Seinfeld, and I'll take some pictures for Tim.
So we're talking about this before it went live. So I went to New York City in college on a day trip for one of my college classes. And after we finished the museum and our assignment, we had the rest of the day to, just break off into a group and explore New York. And we were in downtown Manhattan. So I wanted to see the Ghostbusters Firehouse, but I think it's like all the way up in Brooklyn or something. It was too far away for us all to do the things we wanted to do because we couldn't just go all the way out there to that and then make it back in time.
Yeah.
But I did get to see a bunch of the Ghostbusters locations. Some, like the people in the group, understood because they're things like, the library. I got to see that. Columbus Circle. I got to see that. A lot of those things are really close together. Like Lincoln Center is near the library in Times Square. Lincoln Center is where the fountain is. But there's things like the people in my group was like, "This is stupid. Why are you taking photos of it?" Because I found like Dana Barrett's apartment building on Central Park West, and I was like taking like 50 photos of it. And like, why are you photographing that? And we found a tavern on the green, and I was like taking photos of that. I was trying to find the brick wall that Louis Tully jumps over when the terror dog's chasing him. They're like, "Mark, this is dumb. We got better things to do."
Oh man, if I went to New York, I'd be taking pictures like by like the random like soup place, the soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld. I'd be like, "No soup for you." That's what I would be doing.
Hey Nasser, since we last talked, have you seen Back to the Future?
No.
My gosh.
I'm sorry.
Have you seen Ghostbusters?
Yes, I've seen Ghostbusters.
Oh, thank God. And I know you've seen Jaws 2, so good for you.
Yes, yeah. Jaws 2 is pretty good, isn't it, Nasser?
Yes, it is.
I'll tell you something. You want to hear something really cool? Go on eBay and see if you can find the copy of the Marvel adaptation of Jaws 2.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
It's better than the movie. It's so good. I bought it. It was pretty much
bloodier.
It's more violent, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was a good movie. Though I only had like a really small critique, I guess, which was just like when Brody's like, yeah, guys, I think it's happening again. And everyone kind of shrugs. And I was like, did you guys not remember what happened last time? Like all those people died. It was a big event. And they were just like, it's not a shark. That looks like a piece of celery or some dirt.
Yeah, they treat him like he's crazy at the beginning of the movie. Like, they're like, oh, there goes Brody chasing after his sharks again. Sharks. Everyone knows those don't exist.
That was the only part I didn't like. Everything else was fine. It had some good kills and some good scenes on the water.
Well, I like that Jaws basically turns into fucking Jason at the end of the movie. Yeah. Like, he gets half his face burned off and he keeps coming back.
It's a slasher movie. I keep telling my brother this. He's like, it's not a slasher movie. I'm like, yes, it is.
No, I'll tell you the part that I don't like about it is that they don't really explain where the shark came from, right? So it's just another random shark that's like a monster, and just happens to have the same eating habits as the first one. And it'd be one thing if that was the case, okay? Like, okay, this is just nature taking its course, and you just have an area where there's a proliferation of man-eating carnivorous sharks everywhere. But the shark appears at the wreck of the orca. So you're thinking to yourself, like, this is all connected. What are the odds that this crazy killer shark appears at the wreckage?
They were cousins.
That's what I was wondering. Like, I was hoping that there would be an explanation, like it was his mom or his sister or a distant cousin or something.
Well, then you get to Jaws 3, where the Brody kids are grown up and they're working at SeaWorld, and another giant shark shows up at SeaWorld and tries to eat them there. It's like it's chasing them. And that's how we got Jaws the Revenge, where the plot is literally that the shark is the same shark in every movie, and it keeps coming back to life, and it's dedicated itself to eating all the Brody family because it eats one of the Brody kids at the beginning.
That is genius. I have 3 and 4. I haven't watched them yet, but I want to.
They're bad. I mean, they're really bad.
3 is awful.
Yeah, 3 is so boring. Yeah.
I just want to see people eaten by sharks.
Now, here's the weird thing about Jaws 3, okay? I'll just tell you this preemptively so you're not like, what the crap? So Jaws 3 was originally meant to be watched in 3D. So after almost every kill, the body part or the fish or whatever, it'll just rotate in front of the camera awkwardly for seconds.
Yeah, that's like how it was when I was watching, not to cut you off, but House of Wax, because I don't have a 3D TV, and so I'm watching it, and there's the guy with like the paddle ball, and he's like throwing it at the camera for like 10 minutes. I'm like,
it goes on forever. Yeah, the paddle ball sequence. There's also like a can sequence, I'm sure was really satisfying if you had 3D glasses on, but when you're watching it, it's just kind of like, those legs don't look 3-dimensional.
Right. But sorry, Tim. What else were you saying?
No, I didn't. I wasn't finishing anything. I had said everything I wanted to.
Okay. And also, I want to read this real quick. Justin Mobley says, "Ha, you did in fact say that. However, I want to buy some things too." All right, Justin. Well, I have 4 books on Amazon that you could buy. They're all in the description. If you really want to keep spending your money.
You ahead. Sly dog, you Nasser. I see. You're learning these shilling tricks.
Right. Must always shill.
Revolver Solver says, wait till you get to the ghost shark in Jaws 4. So
there we go.
There is, okay, you joke about that. There is a movie, and it's called Ghost Shark, and it has the best premise ever. So basically, it's insinuating it's a sequel to Jaws. So basically, it starts with the shark getting killed, but it actually gets resurrected as a ghost by a voodoo person, and the way it works is the ghost of the shark can come after you as long as there's water. So if you're drinking a glass of water, boom, you're dead. That shark will jump out of the water.
I love this already.
The best part is the person, this is coming. The guy's taking a crap. The shark totally comes out of the toilet and eats him.
That sounds brilliant.
So
what was there was one that it's like 10 years old now, but it was when like William Atherton couldn't get work anymore, so he was I think it was Beach Shark, and it was a shark that could travel under sand like a graboid from Tremors.
Land shark.
Land shark, yeah, good. They keep making those things. I think there's Sharkalanch versus Sharknado now. I don't know.
And I like shark movies. They're great. I like Deep Blue Sea.
Because Samuel L. Jackson
gets more of them.
Yeah, I didn't realize they made a sequel.
I think I've only just seen Jaws and Jaws 2. I don't think I've seen any other shark movies, but I want.
Honestly, the allure of shark movies kind of ended for me when they started with CG sharks. So Deep Blue Sea is sort of the last one. That one has a lot of CG sharks in it, but that's kind of the last one I enjoyed. I like the practical effects. If I'm going to watch a giant killer animal movie, I want the animal to be practical, like an alligator or Alligator 2, or even some really shitty ones like Grizzly, where it's an actual grizzly bear, but it's like a really dopey, cute grizzly bear that wouldn't hurt anybody because it probably came from a zoo. So they just dub all this growling over it, but the bear is like those bears you see on YouTube that wave at people. Like, it's really friendly and nice.
You know what I want to see is that Orca movie that Scream Factory just put out a new
That's
Blu-ray
really
on.
good. That one's fantastic. Orca the Killer Whale,
I haven't seen it yet or read the book. I want to get both.
Well, so here's the thing. Watch the movie. Don't read the Wikipedia article. Don't read the book.
Yeah, I never read the wiki.
Spoil. Yeah. Don't spoil anything about Orca for you. You'll enjoy it so much more if you just go into it cold.
Okay, so somebody PayPal me like $20 so I could go get this Blu-ray.
Wow, that was quick. You see, it comes highly recommended.
No, I've been wanting to watch it, but I already spent all my birthday money. So
House Shark, Sand Shark. I know there was a movie called Dick Shark.
Dick Shark.
Yeah, that's what Full Custom Hot Dog is saying in the chat. That guy has a great channel, by the way. If you guys are in the chat and you haven't visited Full Custom Hot Dog, I don't know how that guy doesn't have more subscribers. That channel is freaking awesome.
Alrighty then, everybody go sub to Full Custom Hot Dog.
Yeah, I gotta do a horror stream with him, and I gotta do a horror stream with you again, Nasser.
Oh yeah, totally. We could do one whenever, pretty much.
Nasser, have you seen Night of the Lepus?
No, I remember you told me about that one, and I did put it in my Amazon save for later, but I haven't gotten it yet.
We should talk about that.
Oh man.
So Nasser, which one are you going to get to first on Tim's recommended list? Night of the Lepus or Back to the Future? What's your priority here? Night of the Lepus. Yeah.
Did you? Okay, so it's funny. I like Just Some Guy. I love Just Some Guy. We were doing a stream with Englentine, and the topic was, what is a movie that everyone likes that you hate? And his was Back to the Future. I was like, Just Some Guy. I don't know what to think anymore.
Oh man, have you guys seen Parasite yet?
No, that was the one that won an Academy Award, right?
Yes, and it was incredible. It definitely lives up to the hype.
That's the Korean movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's much
so I avoided that one. Maybe it was just because, I don't know. So all the hype around it was, like Tim said, it's the Korean movie. Like, oh my gosh, this movie was made by Korean people. Did you know Korean people can make movies? Oh my goodness. It's so cute that this Korean person made a movie. Let's give it an Academy Award.
I know what you mean, but it does deserve all the awards. It wasn't given for any sort of virtue signal. It was really well done.
I feel it's hard to trust that. I mean, I do want to check it out, I guess, but that's what they said about Get Out, that Jordan Peele movie, where it's like, no, I know everybody's saying it's so woke and it's it's great, this movie with a great black perspective, and then I watched the movie and it fucking sucked, and like, this movie's terrible.
Well, this movie is not trying to be woke. It's just telling a good story.
All right, I'll get around to it. When you get around to Back to the Future, I'll get around to Parasite.
Alrighty then. I'll get it eventually. Have you seen The Resurrected?
What? Never heard of that.
No, I think I've heard of that one. I'm thinking
Chris
of Bone
Sarandon.
Tomahawk. Never mind. Chris Sarandon. Really? So it's an older movie then?
Yeah, it's from 1990, I think, or 91 maybe. It's based on the case of Charles Dexter Ward, which is a Lovecraft story. I still need to read actually, but yeah.
No, I got to check it out then. So it's Chris Sarandon doing a H.P. Lovecraft movie in the 90s. I got to get on that. That sounds incredible.
It is awesome.
Do you watch anime, Nasser?
I'm not going to say much more. What was that, Tim?
Do you watch anime?
I've only seen one anime called Erased.
Oh, that one's good.
Yes, I really loved it. I was so excited at the end because I when I was watching it, I was like, I think it's this guy that's the killer. And then he was like, yeah, I'm the killer, and I was like, I called it.
Yeah, that one was really good. They kept it up until the very end.
Yes.
And they revealed it in a very good way. You know, they made I think they made a movie and a TV series out of it.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I watched it on Hulu like I don't know 2 or 3 years ago maybe, and it was so awesome. I decided never to watch any more anime because I knew it could never live up to that.
Hey Nasser, have you seen Cobra?
No.
The Sylvester Stallone movie? No.
I hated that movie. I saw it for the first time 2 years ago.
This is where one of those cases where I can disagree wholeheartedly with Tim, because I watched it. He'd always told me it was terrible, and I watched it a couple weeks ago, and I fucking loved it.
It's like a hostage negotiation scene in the supermarket. That's how it starts.
Yes, it's great. But no, did you even make it to the end, Tim? Did you watch the whole movie?
The whole thing.
So the movie ends with so Cobra, Sylvester Stallone, is chasing this bad guy called the Night Slasher, who's an axe murderer, and he chases him into the fucking like steel mill from Terminator 2. So they're going to the steel works. There's like molten steel everywhere, and all these like giant hooks on chains. And for some reason, there's this ridiculous apparatus, which is like a skinny hallway with two like blow torches coming from both sides, and then a series of hooks and chains on a conveyor belt that drag, I guess, stuff into the blow torches. It was made for only one purpose, and that's killing the bad guy at the end. And at the end, so Cobra chases the bad guy, and he finally he finally beats him up at the end. And the Night Slasher is like, well, you gonna take me in, Cobra? My constitutional rights? And I'll get life in prison, 3 square meals a day on the taxpayer's dime, that kind of thing. And Cobra's like, this is where the law ends and I begin. He picks him up and he impales him on the meat hook, and the guy's like squirming around like, oh god, and the meat hook carries him into the blowtorches and sets him on fire. It's so ridiculous.
Oh man. So earlier I was watching this playlist of Cinemassacre reviews because I've been watching a lot of Cinemassacre, and the next one in the playlist was The Birds 2, but I've never seen it, and I never plan to because I hear
you don't want to. It's not good.
Yeah, and so I was like, you know what? I'll watch the review anyways and see what he has to say. And I couldn't stop laughing because the mayor is also the doctor, and he just hangs out at the bar the whole time. That had me laughing for like 15 minutes straight. I couldn't breathe.
That was if it's a made-for-TV sequel to an Alfred Hitchcock movie made like 30 years since the Alfred Hitchcock movie, how good is it gonna be? It's terrible.
He was dead when it came out.
Yeah. So you should see Psycho 2, though, if you've never seen Psycho 2.
I plan to. I plan to. Even though it's been spoiled for me.
I got Psycho is so good, and I have the comic book collection too. The comic book adaptations, they're perfect. They're so good.
Oh man, and there's a question in the chat from Matt Reese, who also has an incredible channel you guys should all go sub to. But he says, ask Tim, doesn't Doug Ernst love Cobra?
Doug Ernst loves Cobra, and he and we see very much eye to eye in terms of religion and politics, but I'm going to disagree with Doug Ernst on Cobra.
So you know two people like Cobra, Tim. Mark and Doug both like Cobra. I will say this.
Okay, Mark, if you like Cobra, just trust me on this, you need to see Roadhouse. Because if you like Cobra, you're gonna love Roadhouse.
All right, so that one I saw that at Walmart when I went grocery shopping last week, and they have a special edition out there, and it's actually on the rack next to Cobra, so maybe I will pick up Roadhouse.
Okay, Roadhouse, from what I thought about it, because I just remember, God bless his soul, Father Nelson, I had to give him a ride from the monastery every weekend when I was in college, and he was this like cute little old man, and we'd be talking about just innocuous things like the weather and stuff like that. And one day he was like, what's your favorite movie? I'm like, I don't know, there's a ton. And he's like, I love movies, but my all-time favorite movie is Roadhouse. And I was like, why? And he was like, oh, Patrick Swayze, he's this do-gooder, and he just, he gets the woman and he saves the day and he fights the bad guys. And Father Nelson was old, and I was like, it's a movie about a bouncer. And he was like, it's more than that, son. And I was like, okay. So I just remember he passed away not too long after that. But Roadhouse was on Netflix. And so I'm like, okay. I just remember Father Nelson talking about this movie, and I watched it. I was like, this has nothing to do with a bouncer. That's like basically the red herring. It's about like this guy's adventures, like beating up like local mob bosses and like the mafia and like a corrupt car dealership salesman and stuff. I was like, where has this been my whole life? I love this movie.
Well, it's such a gamble, though. When you try to rediscover those old classics, because sometimes you get a Roadhouse or, for me, a Cobra. But Tim, this is a shared disappointment we can both agree on. Remember when I came over and we were looking for a movie to watch, and so we watched Lone Wolf McQuade with Chuck Norris? Like, that movie fucking sucked. It's terrible.
Hey, our printer just texted me.
Oh.
This is Mr. Joseph from our printer, and he says, "Ask Nasser about Jaws 2." You're a little bit behind, but
Right.
that's okay. We'll ask Nasser about Jaws 2.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, just to reiterate it, I mean, I really liked it. It was a good movie. My only nitpick was just that when Chief Brody's like, guys, I think it's happening again. Here's a picture. And they're all like, oh, seaweed. Nothing's wrong.
Well, doesn't he open fire on a school of fish? Because it's a school of fish that's shaped like a shark, you know?
Yeah, that was goofy, but that part was like so bad it's good. But no, it was a good movie. That's just the only like weird part is they all acted like it's not that they acted like he was crazy. They just kind of acted like nonchalant, I guess, like because he's real paranoid, and they're just like, oh, okay. Like they didn't even say he was acting weird, and they didn't even show any concern. Like they didn't show any emotion. They were just like, oh, yeah, doesn't look like a shark.
So Dave Isanovich in the chat, he says, if you think about it, Roadhouse is mostly a Western. I would agree. Actually, I would say Roadhouse is kind of the closest thing you're going to get to a live action Capcom side-scrolling beat-em-up game like Final Fight or Double Dragon.
I said that about the Warriors, and you disagree with me. You didn't like the Warriors.
Dude, Roadhouse is 10 times better than the Warriors.
Oh, I'll be the judge of that. All right, I'm going to Walmart, and I'm going to get Roadhouse.
Oh my gosh, like you're not going to regret it. If you don't like it, you can give me your copy. Like,
okay, you win either way, don't you?
I'm not a big fan of whatchamacallit. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of Roadhouse, so I'll gladly take a copy.
Mark, I don't know if we talked about this since I saw it last month. I can't remember if we have. Did we talk about Repossessed yet?
No. I saw that you mentioned that on Twitter that you watched Repossessed and you liked it. Like, finally, the only other person on the planet who enjoyed Repossessed.
Man, it was one of the funniest movies I ever watched. I loved one of my favorite jokes was, like people hold up like the signs like John 3:16. Yeah. And somebody holds up like Lakers 117, like Celtics 115 or something like that. Like,
yeah. What's this about?
Every single joke in that movie landed.
So Repossessed is a parody of The Exorcist, but they got Linda Blair. It's basically like a comedy sequel to The Exorcist, and Leslie Nielsen plays the father who has to. So he's supposed to be the father who exorcised Linda Blair in The Exorcist, and then she gets possessed again. She gets repossessed, and so he has to come out of retirement to exorcise her again. And it is this really goofy comedy. It was Les Nielsen in his prime. It's not as good as The Naked Gun, but it's up there. It's one of his best ones. And it ends with that he has to go back and exorcise her again. But they play it like a wrestling match. So they have like announcers who are like, okay, like Father Dyer goes in for the and like he goes in with the holy water. Ooh, denied. Like things like that.
Oh man!
Yeah,
when they started singing at the end, and the devil's like,
oh yeah, devil in a
music.
blue dress.
I was like, plot twist: the devil hates rock music.
Would Doug Ernst like it?
I don't know. It depends on if he likes Airplane and movies like that. If he likes those sort of like screwball kind of comedies,
he might
Cobra.
like
Repossessed. He likes Cobra.
Well, Doug Ernst told me he avoided The Exorcist because he was writing Soul Finder, and I guess he didn't want it to be similar or something. But
it's ironic. Doug Ernst does not like horror movies, but if you think about it, Soul Finder is not really a horror movie or a horror comic, I guess.
Yeah, well, neither is The Exorcist. It's not. It wasn't intended to be horror.
There was I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but there was a part in the script of Soul Finder where the demon vomits on someone, and I changed it during the editing process, And the reason why is I was like, I know you haven't seen The Exorcist, but this happens in that movie. And if we put it in there, it's going to be too derivative. People will call us out on it. So I changed that one scene.
What did you change it to?
I changed it to the lady ripping a. No, I changed it to her biting like a chunk out of this guy's arm.
Okay, I think I remember which part you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was another awesome book.
Look! Hey, full custom hot dog in the chat. Everybody buy Roadhouse. See.
All right, fine. I'm going to go buy Roadhouse. Full Custom's the one who actually told me to go look for Cobra at Walmart because Walmart got in a bunch of Shout Factory and Scream Factory Blu-rays, which they normally don't carry because those are like boutique Blu-rays. So normally Walmart wouldn't have those, but they ended up with a bunch of random ones. And he told me Cobra was there, and it was only like $12.99. So I was like, "Fuck yeah!" It was like 3 a.m, and I ran over there in my boxers and I bought Cobra.
Except when I went to Walmart, they had nothing. No Scream Factory, nothing. Cabbage Head says, who's also a great artist, everyone go sub to him, says, I just realized I called Mark Mike in my comment earlier. I feel like an old man.
Major party foul. We like Cabbage Head. Cabbage Head shows up in our chats on Twitter.
Yeah,
Cabbage Head.
He's a goat.
He's a goat?
No, I said he's the goat.
Oh,
greatest of all time. Yeah. Get with it, Tim.
Right.
I mean, hell,
Tim's
last week we had a unicorn in the pickle. You never know.
Oh my goodness, that stream! I was at my sister's house in Maryland, and my room was in the basement, and I posted a picture on Twitter just how creepy the stairs are going down there. The basement freaked me out, and I was laying on the bed down there one day, and I was listening to you guys' stream talking about unsolved mysteries, and I got so freaked out because the basement already creeped me out, and I'm laying on the bed, and you guys are talking about like weird experiences. Mark's like, yeah, my grandma hadn't been living in the house for 2 months, and the neighbor was waving to her every day. He thought she was still in there, and I was like, I'm not alone in this room. Like, I was getting so scared, and later on, like towards the end of the stream, like I started to like doze off for a bit, and then my brother came downstairs. I got so freaked.
Have you seen the new Unsolved Mysteries?
Yes, I did. I liked it? Yeah, I liked it. I think it would have been better if it had a host.
I completely disagree.
No, yeah, you think that would make it better, but
like,
they
tried
did the
doing
same,
like aesthetic. Like,
they tried doing a host before after Robert Stack died. They did like another like 5 seasons of the show with different hosts, and it didn't work with anybody hosting other than Robert Stack. It just doesn't work. It's like the Twilight Zone. You know, without Rod Serling, they've tried different hosts.
Yeah, it's not the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's why the 1980s version didn't have a host, because they knew that they just couldn't find anybody better than Rod Serling, so they didn't even try. But then, like,
pissed me off that with the new one they had Jordan Peele being the host.
Yeah, fuck him, that's terrible. And like the 2000s one had Forrest Whitaker, which was really weird. Like that's just an odd choice, and he didn't have any sort of spooky gravitas. It was just a bad choice. You know, Rod Serling is the Twilight Zone, so just do what the 80s series did and don't have a host. It's better that way.
You know, whatchamacallit, and I'm waiting for Nurkish to roast Twilight Zone because he and I talk about it, and he's seen all the episodes. And I'm like, why are you watching it? And he's like, 1, I like the Twilight Zone. 2, this is a train wreck, and it's just so much fodder for roasting. Because basically, the gimmick for every episode is the same. It's like, hey guys, aren't we so woke? The white people were the bad people all along.
I mean, that's the thing, is like every episode is the same, where that's the twist, where it's like, hey yo, so what if there was a gremlin out on the wing, but it wasn't a gremlin, it was white people. Oh, hey, so what if there was monsters on Maple Street, but they wasn't monsters, they was white people. Oh, and every episode, it's.
I did some roast videos of it, but it turned out like so awful, and I was like, I'm awful at these, so I deleted them. But that show was awful, and I knew it was going to be awful. I knew they wanted it because at the end of every episode, of course, there was always the moral, which was like a normal sort of moral, you know, like don't do bad things, kids.
Right.
You know? And I was like, as soon as they were like, yeah, and this is gonna be Jordan Peele, I was like, oh no, they want to make it woke, because they're like, see, it always had a little agenda in every episode, so we got to make it our own agenda. I cringed, and like I watched the first, I don't know, 2 episodes maybe. It was awful. Like Oh my goodness! As soon as I saw the title of one of them was like Nightmare at 30,000 feet or something, I was like, oh my goodness! They're like, please do not touch this episode. There's just no way they could outdo it.
Yeah, even the
This turned out to be
2000s
trash.
version, the Forrest Whitaker version, did the same thing. It didn't do it with every episode like the Netflix one, but it still did it with some of them. Like they did Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, but they decided like, oh, everybody, the Twin Towers just fell down 5 minutes ago. Let's do an allegory to that. And so instead of monsters, it was like the terrorists are due on Maple Street. And so all the people are paranoid, accusing each other of being terrorists. And that's what causes the downfall of society is everybody blaming each other as being like a secret Muslim. Oh my God, this is terrible.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, they should never have ever touched the Twilight Zone. It should have just it had a good 5 seasons, and they should have left it at that.
The problem with the Twilight Zone, anything in the modern incarnation, is the Twilight Zone had set so much groundwork as far as twists are concerned. Between the Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and Tales from the Crypt, they covered a lot of bases in storytelling as far as like gotchas at the end of things. And the reality is that a lot of modern writers, especially Hollywood types, they're so uncreative that they can't come up with the same caliber.
1,000%. That's why they got to keep stealing the names. They have no good ideas of their own. And one big thing to me is just the atmosphere of it. With from 1959 to 1964, it's just got a great aesthetic to it. It just adds to the creepy factor, but it doesn't work in modern day.
Exactly. A lot of the Twilight Zone is less is more because like people I think confuse the Twilight Zone with the Outer Limits. The Twilight Zone didn't have like a guy in monster makeup in every episode. A lot of the episodes of the Twilight Zone they're bottle episodes. They have no special effects. They probably don't have any music outside the opening theme. Like there's one with William Shatner and his wife, and they're stuck at a diner.
I love that one. That's one of my favorite ones.
They're obsessed with that little fortune-telling napkin holder, and they keep trying to get it to do all their opinions for them. And that's the whole episode is them sitting at a table looking at that card holder.
Yeah, or like the one where the guy, he throws his quarter in the box for a newspaper or something, and it lands on its edge, so now he could like read people's minds and stuff. Like it's always something real basic, easy to do. You just do a little voiceover, to in post to hear the people's thoughts.
Or geez, 5 people in search of an exit, which is literally just like those characters in a round room for 25 minutes, and that's it.
Right,
and it works because it's so good.
Like I forget the name of it, but when the little girl falls through her wall, and they're like, "We could hear you, but we can't see you," and like that's a good one. Or like the Talking Tina one where
it was
the doll doesn't do much. The doll doesn't really do much. It's just like, the doll's evil.
Yeah, I mean, you never see the doll move. It's not like Chucky where it gets up and walks around. It's just Telly Savalas holding this doll prop, and they got June Foray who was the voice of Chatty Cathy, that doll. They got her to do a voiceover for the doll, and it works so well. Even when it kills him at the end, you don't see it do it. You just see him walking down the hallway, tripping and falling down the stairs.
Yeah, I really wish they would not touch the Twilight Zone, but if they did, they should have done it in black and white and tried to set it in older times, at least try to catch the aesthetic. And
well, I mean, they tried with Twilight Zone the movie, and that's like half of it. Well, so half of that movie is good and half of it isn't. Because it's an anthology film and every segment has a different director, and some are better than others. Like I hate the Steven Spielberg segment, the kick the can one. It just stops the movie dead. It's so boring and it's so saccharine and doesn't fit in with the rest of the movie. And it's like Steven Spielberg at his schmaltziest. It's lousy. I hate that part.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just like I just cringed like every single second of the new one, and I'd only seen the first couple episodes, and like it just like I knew I hated it from like the moment they announced it, but like especially like the very first second, and it starts with like this comedian that's like, "Hey guys," and I hate.
I'm sorry, but Cabbage Head has a great comment in there. He says, "The real white people were the friends we made along the way."
That's gold. Oh man.
It's true though.
Dennis Peruch in here with the hot take. He says, "I saw Dr. Sleep last night. Preferred it much more than The Shining."
Really?
Oh, that's a tall order. So I still haven't seen Dr. Sleep yet. I don't know if it's a sequel to. So, I mean, I know that obviously the Stephen King book is a sequel to the other Stephen King book, but is the new movie a sequel to the Stanley Kubrick Shining, or is it a sequel?
I don't think it's like an exact sequel, although I still haven't seen Doctor Sleep, but I do own it, but I haven't seen it. But I hear it's not quite an exact sequel. But I mean, I guess in some ways it is. In some ways it probably isn't.
I mean, I just asked because the Stanley Kubrick Shining is very different from the Stephen King Shining, so I just want to know which one this is a follow-up to, the movie version, I mean. So.
Yeah, and I'm not even really a fan of The Shining, but this is like the only Dennis is the only person I've seen that says I like Doctor Sleep more. So that's why it's a hot take, even though I don't really care about The Shining.
I mean, I don't know if Doctor Sleep is even good or not, the movie. I mean, if it was...
Well, I hear it's got like one of those like token woke characters in it, so that's why I put it off.
Yeah, it is modern day Stephen King, so
yeah,
so you're gonna get
like modern day Stephen King. Like he has that one book he put out like I don't know in like 2018. I forgot what it was. I think it was what was it called? I can't remember, but it was like a really short like novella probably, and it was about like those gosh darn intolerant neighbors like it was just something really woke like that. I think it was called wasn't like Elevation or something.
Maybe. I mean, so Stephen King. I mean, when you write a book a year for 40 years, you're eventually just going to be writing about the things that annoy you. So he probably has a neighbor who plays their music so loud, or has like parked his like pickup truck on the front lawn, so he writes a 400-page novel about how much he hates that guy.
Right, and he's like, oh, he's a Nazi.
Yeah, he's a Nazi. Right.
What's your least favorite Stephen King book that you've actually finished like entirely? Because there were a couple I couldn't get through. Like I could not finish Needful Things, but like the one I read entirely was The Dark Half, and when I finished it, I was like, why did I read this?
I hated Rose Red, the Diary of Ellen Rimbauer.
Every time I see that at Half Price Books or Books A Million or something, I just remember when you told me that you were like, "I hate Rose Red," and I'm like, "Yeah,
it's so bad."
Yeah,
that's why I'm so distrustful of Stephen King. Is that if I read his short fiction and it's a bad short story, it's really just like a 1 hour investment of my time.
I really like The Mangler.
Yeah, like The Mangler short, better than the movie. But
I haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting down, and it's a novella, not a novel. I guess it doesn't count. But I watched the Langoliers miniseries, and I was like, the book's got to be better than this. And then I sat down and I read the Langoliers novella, and I was like, nope, it's still terrible.
So the Langoliers isn't worth watching. I have it. It came in.
Oh God, no! It's a miniseries, so it's like 12 hours long. So it's just awful. I can't. So, in fact, most of the 1990s Stephen King miniseries aren't worth watching. I mean, maybe. So, the original It, I can't tell with that one because that one's all nostalgia for me. I don't know if I can really separate it. I mean, I'm glad to hear that because I hear a lot of people who didn't grow up with it hate it and say it's really bad. And I know there's a lot of bad stuff in it, but for me, I love it and I always will. But like shit like the Golden Years or the Tommyknockers. Even The Stand, like the miniseries version of The Stand, is really awful.
Yeah, I think like most of those came in the box set I got, which came with Silver Bullet, which I guess made up for it because I really loved Silver Bullet.
Well, that one's a movie and not a miniseries, and it's got Gary Busey in it, so it's always worth it.
Yeah, that was a really awesome movie. That either that or American Werewolf in London is my favorite werewolf movie. Those. I just really loved how wholesome Silver Bullet was. I did not expect it to be that wholesome.
So yeah, Silver Bullet. It opens up. It has that narration from. It feels like you're watching The Wonder Years because it has the narration where the host is. Yeah, or the sister.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so the narrator is the sister character, except she's all grown up and she's just reminiscing about time they fought a werewolf.
She does it for like 5 minutes, and then she doesn't do it again for like another hour. Then the narration's back, and I completely forgot. So she talks again, like when they're doing the montage when they're actually making the silver bullet. She starts talking again. You're like, what? Oh, right, the sister. And the stuff she says is so stupid when they're making that silver bullet. It's like, so our uncle Gary Busey took all of our silverware to the town's only ammo manufacturer, who was considered to be a wizard.
and he could melt down that silver into a single magic bullet that would kill the werewolf. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, but outside of that, it's still a really awesome movie. I really
And
love
that's Corey Haim was the kid in the wheelchair, right? It was one of
Yeah.
the Corys. Yeah, and so the Silver Bullet, Tim, if you haven't seen it,
I have seen it. It's awful.
Yeah. It's this stupid like turbo motorcycle wheelchair. It's called the Silver Bullet.
It's awesome though. It's really awesome.
No, the best part is when the werewolf kills a guy with a baseball bat.
Yeah, that's great. It's genius.
Yeah. Tim, do you dislike Silver Bullet because the werewolf turns out to be the priest at the end?
No, it's
Was
just
it blasphemous?
the movie was just dumb. I watched it with my cousins, and we were like, "What did we waste our time with that
Oh,
for?"
come on.
It's so bad.
It is dumb. I have a different threshold. So my threshold for horror movies is as long as it isn't boring, I like it. If a horror movie is boring, I watched Demon Wind a couple days ago, and Demon Wind was freaking awesome. It's it's terrible, but it's not boring, so that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
There's a part where it's an Evil Dead knockoff, and it was made in the 80s. And so there's a part where the heroes are all trapped in this abandoned house out in the middle of nowhere, and they're surrounded by demons. And they see these women who are all topless, walking towards them. You know, they have satin sashes trailing behind them, and they're all making come hither motions with their hands. And the two guys inside the house just those are demons, aren't they? And yeah, we better not go out there. And then the women immediately turn into monsters. They're the only people in horror movie history to ever outsmart that.
Yeah. I recently watched the Crawl movie from, I don't know, 2 years ago maybe.
Was that the alligator movie?
Yeah. And the story was dumb, but it wasn't boring. So I was like, this is fine. Yeah. But also, speaking of Evil Dead, I still don't like 2.
Really? Well,
yeah, I just think
it was nice knowing you, Nasser. Goodbye forever.
No, it just bothers me because they took such a good story and then remade it and made it stupid.
Well, I know that. So there is that big tonal shift. I mean, it took me a while to get over. I could enjoy Evil Dead 2 when I was a kid, and I remember for a little while I hated Army of Darkness because it was so goofy. But just over time, I've watched those movies more, and I don't mind that they get really silly and really goofy. I actually find that really endearing. I like that they changed that tone. I feel the same way about the Phantasm series, where Part 3 gets really comedic. Part 3 is a straight-up comedy. It's almost Evil Dead 2 levels of goofy. And I used to hate Phantasm 3 because of that, but now I actually don't mind it anymore. I actually enjoy it. So.
Yeah, I didn't really care about Phantasm. I saw the first one and never decided to watch the other ones.
So, hey, you've seen Cabin in the Woods, right?
Yes, it's incredible.
Good. I'm glad. We can all agree on that one.
Yeah. I watched it actually in 2012, I think. So it was a year before I started to watch horror movies, and I was like, yeah, this is a good movie. I thought it was going to be terrifying just because of the name, and I didn't watch those kinds of movies, and I was like, I'm going to be terrified, and then I really liked it. And then when I started to watch horror movies, I was like, oh, now I get why they made those jokes. I get
it's almost like a bad idea to watch Cabin in the Woods before you watch all those movies, because Cabin in the Woods is the movie that you're supposed to watch after you've seen all the horror movies.
Yeah, but I didn't know because I was just I was hanging out with my cousin and he was like, what movie can we watch? And he's like, let's watch something scary. I was like, what do you mean something scary?
You sounded like that.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to watch anything scary. So he was like, oh, Cabin in the Woods. He was like, oh, Cabin in the Woods, this looks cool. I'm like, okay, Cabin in the Woods. I didn't want to watch it. He's like, let's watch this.
I guess to give you credit though, is that Cabin in the Woods, none of the marketing material spoiled the ending of that movie. So when I went to see it, I thought it was just going to be an Evil Dead knockoff. So that entire ending with the secret organization who was protecting the world from Armageddon, none of that stuff was in any of the promotion. They kept that on the down low. So that all came as a surprise to me when I was sitting in the theater watching it. And when the whole movie changed, I was like, holy shit, this is really clever.
Yeah, my favorite part is when on the motorcycle, he's like, all right, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna get some help. And then he just takes off and hits a wall.
Now, you see, that's funny because they only do that kind of joke once in the whole movie. And so it's funny because they only do that joke once. I can think of another Chris Hemsworth movie where they do that joke 20 times in the movie, and it just gets less funny each time. It's Thor 3, Thor Ragnarok, where like every time a character does like a really inspiring speech, they slip on a banana peel and land in dog shit or something. Right. It's just the same thing over and over again.
That became every hero movie. Like I think. Even in, I think it was Justice League, which was awful. Like somebody's giving a speech and then they start saying something like goofy, and then like, oh, I'm holding this rope that makes me tell the truth or something. Like
So that was actually going to be the next topic on the Bunderdome. The next time I do a writing scripts, it's going to be on writing sincerely, and it's basically going to be the fuck Joss Whedon.
Right, or like It Chapter 2, where it's like we get it. So
we're And so Tim and I actually disagreed on this scene. It was in the 2018 Halloween, and Tim's already laughing because this scene was so funny. It's the part where the little black kid is in this babysitter is putting the little black kid to bed, like tucking him in, and Michael Myers is in the closet, and Michael Myers is coming out of the closet to the babysitter is like, "There's no one in the closet." Darnell, or her name is, I don't know, Emmanuel Lewis. And so she goes over to the closet, and of course Michael Myers springs out and kills her. But then like the little Emmanuel Lewis kid is like, "Oh damn! Oh, she's gonna get killed! I'll get the fuck out of here! Shit!" And he like gets up, and everyone in the theater burst out laughing. And he runs down the stairs, and the babysitter's boyfriend's like, "Hey, whoa, what's going on?" And little Emmanuel Lewis kid is like, "Get the fuck out of here, dude! He's gonna fucking kill you!" He like runs out the door, and like it was really funny. But it's a horror movie, like it's not like Evil Dead 2 where it's a horror comedy. Halloween, the 2018, isn't a horror comedy. So it's just this one ridiculous scene in the middle of the movie that it kills a scare in your horror movie and replaces it with a joke. And I hate that.
But you died laughing. I remember being in the theater. We all laughed.
I know, I did, but it's one of those things where like I'm laughing because it's funny, but this isn't a comedy.
That movie was so trash. First of all, how did they? In the end of the first one, if this is a direct sequel to the first one, then how did they catch him if he was shot 6 times?
I know, they never explained. I guess he bled out, and then they just picked him up off the street.
but then look, when he got his mask, it was just a random mask that he stole, and then it starts with these people. They're like, he must be really attached to this mask that he wore in one movie and not 20. So let's take this mask, and it was just like it was just a poorly written. Like I hated all the characters; they were all awful and boring, and it felt like they tried to splice together like 4 different movies. Like there were too many people on the creative team that all wanted to do something else, and the movie pulls in all these different directions, and then they took away everything that makes a slasher movie at the end when Laurie's got her house all booby trapped. Like, I'm gonna hit this button and it means he can't be in this room because the doors are all locked. And the point is he could be anywhere. A slasher could be anywhere. There's always got to be that sense of he could be in any room, around any corner. And she's like, nope, not in here, not in here. Like it's a really trash movie.
I mean, the problem I had with it is certainly not the worst Halloween sequel. There are much worse ones. The issue I had is that, like you said, they stitched together too many scenes and ideas from other Halloween sequels. It almost turns into like a clip show. Like they bring in
like Puppet Master 8 or something.
Yeah, right. So like they do the long tracking shot from Halloween 2, and they end with him getting set on fire like in Halloween 2. But then they bring in Jamie Lee Curtis, getting her revenge. So it turns into Halloween H2O, and It's just too many of the same things all together. They do a scene that's even they do the gas station scene from, I think it was Halloween 4. Like they do so many like Michael Myers greatest hits moments. And honestly, I mean, if you're gonna basically remake Halloween H2O with Jamie Lee Curtis, having her second encounter with Michael, or her third encounter with Michael Myers, whatever, like don't do it with 87-year-old granny Jamie Lee Curtis. It was much more believable in Halloween H2O when she was at least like in her 40s or 50s, but now she's like just an old lady. It's like, oh man, I'm not buying this.
Yeah. So it was trash. And then they had like the montage where he just walks around random houses killing people, which I guess it's cool. I wanted to see some kills, but I just really didn't care. Like the movie was just like bland and boring that I was just like, I don't really care anymore what happens. So, I don't know. In the next movie, and they delayed it like another year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna go into it like, yeah, this is gonna be trash, but maybe we'll see some good kills. Maybe, I don't know. I
Well,
hate all
if
the
they do
characters.
something
So
original, if they get it out of their systems with the first one, and now that this next one's going to be trying different things, and maybe I don't know, but
yeah, I just really hate like I just hate the whole family. Like that whole family is just stupid. Like I couldn't care about any of the characters. They just had no qualities, no reason for me to care. Like I was just hoping that Michael would just like,
well,
just
I
cut
so
him
when
up.
it comes
Like,
to when it comes to slasher movies, I got over that a long time ago. You know, that not liking any of the
no,
characters. That's basically a staple of them.
no. Okay, it's one thing like if you don't care about them, but these characters were just awful. They weren't just like characters. I'm like, yeah, this is a slasher movie with just these characters. It was just really just they were annoying is the thing. It's not like they were just bland. They were annoying and just like dumb in like all the worst ways. Like there's like good dumb and then there's like awful dumb. And especially when they erased, all the other good sequels, there's plenty of bad ones. But I really like 2 and I really like H20. And they erased those for this?
Yeah, I mean, this one replacing them is like kind of what's the point? I mean, it was a course correction from the Rob Zombie films, but not really. It's
Like
kind
they
of sort of a
just hyped
lateral
this
move
up.
in
They
quality.
hyped this up. They're like, yeah, we got Jamie Lee Curtis back, and John Carpenter's doing a score, and blah blah blah, and we're gonna make a direct
Well,
sequel and make it like,
during
real awesome, and then it
during this
sucked.
entire conversation we've been having, Nasser, I can tell you that Tim is just thinking to himself, "That black kid was funny."
It's
I
true
went
because it
Tim
was
on
funny.
that scene. And
I mean, it's really the only part of the movie I remember, so I guess they did something right.
and, that was like
You're gonna die.
that was like one of the previews they put out was like that scene where that chick like she's like nothing's in there and then she like tries to close the door, won't close, she opens it, Michael's there, and seeing that I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be awesome, we're gonna get some awesome babysitter kills, it's gonna be a good story, and then it sucked. Like that scene was good, but the rest of the movie sucked. I don't know why that chick wasn't the main character. She had so much more like charisma to her and like character and like she was better than I can't even remember the chick's name.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie
No,
Lee,
the
played the
granddaughter.
Yeah. Well, there haven't really been too many recent horror movies. I mean, so the ones that I've liked, we've talked about like The Lighthouse already and Hereditary, movies like that.
Midsummer was also fantastic. The Witch.
So, yeah, and The Witch. Midsummer, I liked it. It was so much a carbon copy of The Wicker Man. I mean,
I haven't seen it, so I don't have that problem.
So that's the thing, though. That's the thing is that if you see Midsummer before The Wicker Man, then you won't care, you won't mind. It's almost like if you see Friday the 13th before you see Halloween, you won't think of Friday the 13th as a ripoff. And Friday the 13th is a good movie. And Midsummer is a perfectly good movie. It's really beautifully shot. It's just like beat for beat The Wicker Man, and that distracted me the whole time I was watching it.
Well, I guess I'll watch The Wicker Man then.
You
I
really
plan
should.
to. There's just too many movies and too little money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched Return to Oz. I'm assuming neither of you have
That's
seen
disturbing.
that movie was creepy.
Oh, man.
It's a kids movie.
We watched it in school during a rainy day, and I remember the part where I just like quit watching and just like buried my head in the textbook. It's the part where the lady is like switching her heads out.
Yes, that is straight up horror movie stuff. Like, so all the heads are on these racks in this room. There's like dozens of them, and they're all alive. They're all actresses. So they don't talk. They just move their eyes and follow Dorothy along as she walks down the corridor. And then the lady and it's done with these great practical effects. She just takes her head off her shoulders, sets it on a rack, and then her headless body walks around and then picks up a new head and sets it on. And later in the movie, Dorothy sneaks into that room, and all you see is just like a body under the covers in the bed sleeping, and you even hear snoring. So you assume that the lady has a head. And so Dorothy walks into the hallway, the corridor full of heads, and they're all asleep too. And she has to steal like a magic powder from a cabinet, but she wakes up one of the heads. And so all the heads in the hallway start screaming. And then Dorothy looks back at the bed, and you see the headless woman just rise out of the covers, and it's done in it's done like a horror movie. It's not a kids movie, and this headless body just chases her down the hallway. It's so creepy. It's done incredibly well.
Yeah, I actually hadn't heard of that till like 2 weeks ago, because I've been going through my Cena Massacre phase again. So he had a video talking about the Oz books and what parts made it into the movies and what didn't, and I think that was like largely like the third book, is what
Yeah,
they
it's a
put
mix
into
of
that
2
one.
and 3. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it does a pretty good job mixing 2 and 3. It's just kind of weird because it takes all that stuff, like the headless body, that's from the books. Jack-o'-lantern, that's from the books. The Gnome King, eating an egg and dying, like all that stuff it's all from the books. But the movie decides to just freaking like American McGee it up and just turn it into a straight up horror movie. And this movie was made by Disney of all studios. It's bizarre.
yeah. And Revolver Solver says, how should they do the next Nightmare on Elm Street reboot? That's a good question. I just hope they don't.
Don't.
No, not that. Not that. I just hope they don't just do a rehash. The best reboots are when you try to do something fresh. So
Yeah.
I just hope it isn't a rehash. I just hope they try to try to do something new. Just don't be like, oh, we just got to keep the same elements from the first one,
And that's what
people will
sucked
like
about.
it.
Yeah, I mean the Jackie Earl Haley version. I mean, he was good as far as like a substitute Freddy. He's probably as good as you're gonna get. But
Yeah.
his biggest thing is like they just remade the original beat for beat, except the only big change they added was he was a pedophile who molested children, which is very
Right.
different from someone
And
who
they
just
and they
kills
just like
children.
changed the names here and there.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's Nancy
I
like
don't-
something or other, but it's not Thompson. I don't think they just changed
Yeah,
the
it's
names
just
up.
kind of like arbitrary changes that didn't mean
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just hope they don't rehash it because things like the Blob, the Fly, the Thing. Although I haven't seen the original Thing from Another Planet, they're all really well loved because they did something new with the concept. So
They just took the premise and then went their own direction with it. Like even Alien is a remake of a B movie called It: The Terror from Beyond Space, and
Yeah.
you can see like all the same story beats and premise concepts in there, but they couldn't be more different from each other otherwise. Most people don't even realize Alien's a remake of another movie. But they're both good. It: The Terror from Beyond Space is a fantastic 1950s B movie, and so is Thing from Another World. Like Little Shop of Horrors, like they did the Roger Corman version is very different from the Frank Oz version, the Frank Oz musical.
I've only seen the original.
Well, you should definitely check out the Frank Oz musical. It's really good. They have a Blu-ray out there that has the original ending on it, which is really cool because they unearthed that one and they remastered it. So I recommend
cool.
that.
Cool, I will check that out. But yeah, at the end of the day, they just got to do something new. They could have Freddy in it, but I would just hate it if they tried to do like another one of those like direct sequels to the first one. Like that would be awful.
Yeah, if they did a direct sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street 1 that ignores all the other sequels and they had to get a different actor to play Freddy, like, God, that would be shit.
Yeah, so like
hate
I
that.
mean, have Freddy in it, but I mean, we don't need to see Nancy again. Really, like
Yeah.
we could just give us something fresh. A new story, new place, new characters, just something interesting. That's what that's pretty much all I have to say about it. But let's see. Matthew D. Reese says, Mark Pellegrini, are you saying Jordan Peele is guilty of cultural appropriation?
Yes. I don't know how else to answer that question. I mean, he's guilty of everything that's bad because I hate him. So,
Oh man, Full Custom Hot Dog says that and Watcher in the Woods. Disney was pure nightmare fuel. I haven't seen that one either.
I got to find Watcher in the Woods. I think the DVD might still be in print. If I can find it, I'm going to pick that up because it's not on Disney Plus, and it's one I've wanted to see. It was so Disney in the 80s, they weren't the Disney that they are now. Like they were hemorrhaging money, and so they were just doing anything and everything. They were going wild with ideas, and that's when they were just making these really insane movies like Return to Oz. They did Watcher in the Woods, which is a Disney branded horror film. In like the mid 70s, the late 70s, they did The Black Hole, which is them trying to do like a serious like PG rated sci-fi adventure film. They did like The Black Cauldron and The Great Mouse Detective. They did, and Oliver and Company. They did these really weird and different animated films. Like they were just trying everything. It kind of sucks that they made The Little Mermaid and they found a formula that works. And so we just got all those princess fairy tale movies throughout the 90s where they just kind of got stuck in a formula. I actually like the 80s because it's so experimental for Disney. It's kind of the last time they really were a house of ideas.
Yeah, and Full Custom Hot Dog says New Nightmare was a great way to kind of end the series. I love New Nightmare. I go back and forth with that one and the first one for which one's my favorite Nightmare, but yeah, I really love the concept of that he comes out of the movie and gets him.
Well,
in real
New
life.
Nightmare is a great companion to the first one. So, like, if you don't want to watch any of the other Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because New Nightmare is like a separate continuity from the sequels. So if you just watch the Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and then you watch New Nightmare as a companion with it, they go really well together because they're meant to. You know, New Nightmare is like Shadow of the Vampire. That's a companion film for Nosferatu. It's kind of like this is the secret real world making of Shadow of the Vampire.
I've been
and
meaning
Tim,
to
I
watch
don't
that
think
one
you
too.
like that one.
No,
wanna
I did
pick
not
that
like
one
that
up.
one.
Yeah. Tim doesn't like any of the movies I like, even the ones with Willem Dafoe in them.
That's sad. Oh man, Matthew Reese says The Great Mouse Detective has been a favorite for me.
That one's really underrated. That one, because if you watch The Great Mouse Detective, you might not realize how different it is from all the other Disney movies made at that time. It doesn't have a love interest character. It has no romantic subplot whatsoever. It's just a straight up animated adventure film. It's really good.
And I'm putting the link here again for Black Ops Volume 3. We've been going for really close to 2 hours now, so
Yeah.
it's probably time to wrap it up because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
But we and Matthew D. Reese says rip Vincent Price. Yes, love Vincent Price.
Yes.
But
If you like Vincent Price, I don't know if Matthew Reese noticed this or not, but in Common America, the scientist character is modeled after Vincent Price. You're supposed to read his dialogue with his voice in mind.
didn't think about that.
Yeah, so
gonna-
Dr. Gracie, he's named after a character from the Haunted Mansion, the ride, and he's modeled to look like Vincent Price. But when I'm writing his dialogue, the voice I have in my head is Maurice LaMarche's Vincent Price impression, which sounds like his Orson Welles impression, if you know, like Pinky on the Brain. And so that's the voice you should be reading it with.
Oh man, you know Vincent Price was a gourmet chef. I didn't know that till recently.
Yeah, he had a cookbook.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was watching an interview and he said that, and I was like, I could not imagine this man like serving me food. Like he brings out some spaghetti, it's got eyeballs in it.
Well, he was also like he had a master's degree in fine art or something, so he was an expert
he
on
studied
art.
collected art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one who brought art to Sears. I don't know if that's the legacy you might want, but he was the one who opened an art gallery in Sears, and that was a big thing that they had for a long time.
Yeah, a bunch of he picked out like all the pieces to turn into prints and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, guys, I'm spamming the link right now for Black Ops if you guys want to buy that, and it just launched today, so you guys got plenty of time to get it, but might as well get it now. And it looks like they're only it refreshed. I was about to say they're only like a backer away from 15,000, but then it refreshed and you went up to $15,612. So 399 backers. Next person to back puts them to 400. So why don't you go back and put them over 400 to the people listening. We've got 15 people in here, and please hit that thumbs up, please, and share out the link. Even though we're ending, maybe somebody will want to catch the replay.
We just want to say real quick a thank you for the people who have supported us or who have pre-ordered. It's one of those things where you don't know if people are backing you because they like you as a person or if they like your book, and we would just like to think that y'all like our storytelling, and if that's the case, we
don't
really
have
appreciate
400
it.
friends, so
I know, right? I don't know. It's not because I want to disparage our work, but because you never know. Like, there's so many good things out there that people don't notice, and so we're just fortunate that people do notice everything that we're doing. So you are guaranteed a very top tier product. We use Doug TenNapel's printer, and so we already know how this book's going to look like. And the funding goal that we've met has already covered our basic costs. So everything else that we're doing that's attached to this is basically to augment the experience that you get. I mean, Mark and I walk away with very little compared to the amount that we generate. We like to put everything back into the project. So just thank you again for backing us, and also to Nasser for being the first one to have us on.
You're welcome, man. I
Yes.
really love your guys' books, and I backed this as soon as I saw the link. Kickstarter sent me a nice email. They were like, back another project by these guys, and I was like, oh, cool. I've never gotten an email like this before. I don't know what it was because it wasn't an update, but like people I backed on Kickstarter before, I never got an email like that, but they sent me one. They were like, back another project by Tim Lim, and I was like, yep, I'm down. So as soon as I saw it in my email, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna back it. So really excited to get this book. You guys put out great books, and everyone that's watching also, if you're not subbed yet to these guys, I'm gonna post a link to the Bunderdome. I posted it earlier and it's in the description, but we'll post it here again for the Bunderdome if you guys want to go watch. Earlier we talked about briefly we talked about some of the videos Mark does where he goes through his script process, and those are some great videos, and especially one of the last couple ones, the ones about peanuts, that one really helped me in a book I'm writing right now, thinking of some different ways for the characters to interact, and he has a lot of great insight that he shows in those videos. So everybody go watch those videos and back the book. And did you guys want to say anything else before we close?
I'm done.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks as well, and yes, I'm also done.
All right, awesome. I kind of want to go like 30 more seconds until we officially cross the 2-hour mark because we're just like super close. So I'm just.
My wife brought Freddy's hamburgers, so I'm jonesing for something to eat here.
All right, you got.
Well,
like
you guys
20
are
more
stupid.
seconds.
I ate before we went on. I'm the only one who prepared for this.
I'm hungry.
All right, go eat your hamburgers. Those
I
are
will.
ready to go.
All right, see you
Have a good
soon.
night, everyone. Bye.
See you guys.
All right, we got 10 more seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
All right, so I will hang in there for the next 10 seconds.
yeah. Well, now we officially
10.
crossed.
All
All right,
right.
bye
Get
everybody.
lost. I'll see you guys later. Bye.